Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. As I said, I'm from the African Centre for Cities, but I work also for a network called Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing. And we work closely with informal worker organizations, not only in South Africa, but globally. Just going to quickly reinforce some of the things that, that Mark so eloquently already outlined. So, the research is unequivocally shows the importance of the informal economy. So the entire informal food system, from producers to distributors, that they play in food security. And a good place is to look, and if you need backup, is the African Centre for Cities. Jane Battersby-Leonard, Gareth Haysom have done a lot of the kind of fine-grained field work that really backs up this in detailed ways. So the quarterly labour force survey is a good place to look. We quickly looked at the most recent stats. There are 3 million people working in the informal sector, but we think around about 500,000 people directly in informal food retail. And there's, of course, a lot of people in the smallholder production side of things. Sorry, it's now... our messaging has been around, and we've been working in multiple ways, supporting the civil society movements, but also trying to kind of land technical and research information into processes within the state, is around unlocking the informal food system. South Africa is ahead of other countries in acknowledging the role that informal traders are playing with this April 2nd regulation that declared spaza shops and informal, notably uncooked food traders, essential service workers. However, they must have permits issued by the municipality. So many street traders have this, but very few spazas do. So in certain provinces, this is not even a requirement. And just to reinforce an issue that Mark has raised about foreigners, who must, according to the regulations, have a visa authorizing them to operate as a business or a valid asylum seeker's permit. And many do not have these. So particularly in the case of asylum seekers, these are renewed every 3 months. And if you're caught in the wrong end of that cycle, you're going to face problems. So we've strongly argued that while databases are important, this is not a time to be formalizing the informal economy. There's just too much at stake around the food security issue. On implementation, we're seeing very much what everybody else is. It's echoing Mark's findings. We've been particularly tracking what's happening in Durban and in KZN, and just to reinforce what Brian said, people are really finding it difficult to access those permits. So often being sent from... Yes.
Can you maximize your screen?
Sure.
Not in presentation mode.
Oh, sorry. Big apologies. They're reporting, going from pillar to post, one office being closed, etc. But also problems in accessing supplies. So while bulk markets are open, secondary markets are not. It would be lovely to hear from the group whether that's kind of across the country. That's certainly a case in the Durban area. They're also reporting issues with transport, and we've been monitoring this across the country, and there's lots of cases where traders have been stopped when they're transporting their goods. Most notably, they're using their last monies to make these attempts to trade. I just also wanted to highlight a critical supply issue where the HSRC, as you all know, has been doing this fairly large survey to 20,000 respondents, were saying that 2/3 of township residents report having no money to buy food. So there has been some progress, obviously, with some of these income grants being increased, etc., but it could be argued too late and perhaps not enough. There's something critical. I'm not going to go through this, but Mark had mentioned that we have been working alongside public health experts to look at guidelines about how to trade safely. So obviously there's something very important, having secured the agreement that informal vendors and are essential service workers, it's really important that there's guidelines around how to do this safely. And the message we're getting from the public health folk is to say, as long as safety guidelines are followed, informal traders can trade as safely as supermarkets. And we've disseminated these a much more user-friendly version on WhatsApp very broadly. It's in a few languages. So just to highlight a few kind of critical issues from this, it's really important to provide water points so that traders can wash their hands at workplaces and products. Also the issue of masks, but sanitizers and or bleach. We know that there's issues with sanitizers not, being, so there is a way to make sanitizers. Bleach is sometimes more readily available, but also to consider screening at trading sites. So we're monitoring very closely the change in regulations, and at stage 4, there will be more of a kind of opening up. We also would like, this is where some of the international work has been quite useful, that social distancing is possible. So I just selected 2 pictures from India, from some of our colleagues there, around being flexible about trading layouts, so that they can practice social distancing. And what's remarkable here is that often, this is a very fleet-footed set of operators, and often some of the best solutions are coming from traders themselves. So we've seen, particularly from West Africa, some lovely solutions around hand washing stations, etc. But they do need the water there in the first place. I think that there's something critical about identifying unused space. So fields, parking lots in township areas and elsewhere where food markets can be set up. So the priority interventions is unlocking the whole system. So it's not okay to just say, look, food traders can trade, but you've got to also work out how they're getting supplies, how they're getting their goods, and allow people to operate. There is something really essential about clear directives to army and the police that SPARs and food traders are allowed to trade. We're now seeing a huge increase in the number of army officials out there. This is not necessarily a strength, this kinds of policing, but also to provide security around SPARs shops. So we're hearing a lot of feedback from SPARs shop owners, really feeling very vulnerable around, with the risk of looting fairly high. And then critically, informal sector operators need assistance to get back running up and running again. So, if you look at the requirements, there is quite a lot of monies that the Department of Small Business Development is allocating to small business support, but all of it currently requires a CIPC registration, which does cut out the 3 million informal operators. So there's a really important advocacy issue around these players getting access to those monies, probably in the form of grants, because and then just to say, we as a network, we have activities in 60 different countries, are following this very closely. We're doing a big survey across 15 cities, looking at the impact of informal workers, and particularly looking at organizational and policy responses. So just to head there, if you're needing information to back up arguments around from outside of South Africa. So I've tried to be as quick as possible. Yeah, that's it from me.